Okay, let's get on. Jim Clifford comes from Bates, Wells and Braithwaite, which, if you know your Dickens, is one of those almost alliterative Dickensian law companies. Lots of companies say they are the leader, but they really are the leading social enterprise advisory firm in the UK. Jim is the author of over 60 social impact studies. He's developed and managed corporate transactions in the UK and internationally. He recently co-developed the first charity-led social impact bond, It's All About Me, which is an organization he now chairs, which does extraordinary work that finds and trains therapeutic adoptive parents for harder-to-place children. Children, effectively, that nobody else wants because the challenge of having them is too challenging. So this is unbelievable work in some ways. Jim was technical chair to the GECAS subgroup developing the EU's social impact measurement standard and is on the social impact measurement work stream and the UK advisory board to the G8 social impact investment task force. So you can see why I'm saying this is somebody you have to talk to. So no pressure. Jim Clifford.
Thank you very much. There we go. Is this now on and can you hear me? Yes, you can. That's quite worrying, isn't it? Okay. I was given one of those very interesting opportunities to come here and speak to you, having been bounced by Yeva at a conference in Helsinki. Would you come and start off this really important conference for us? And it is important what you're going to discuss here. And can you just tell them all about it so they really understand it at the end of half an hour? Okay, yes, opportunity. Wonderful, isn't it? So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to vaguely flip through my notes as well to make sure that I stick with the slides, is I'm going to give you some bits of slightly technical introduction, so you get some of the terminology, what is impact, what is social, some of these things. But I also want to try and bring it to life, because impact is about changing people's lives, young people, older people, those that need it in our society, and maybe ourselves. So we don't want to deal with it in a test tube, in a clinical way. So come with me on a bit of a journey. First of all, let's tackle a few of the definitions. God, it works. This is good, isn't it? No wonder you were feeling so in control. Right, first of all, social. We talk about social impact, and has anyone actually worked out what social is? Social, the word comes from the Latin, which seems to underpin so many European languages. Socius, a friend. It's about the relationships between us and about our relationship with ourselves. So it's how I feel inside, my well-being, how happy I am, how positive I am, how social entrepreneurial I am. And it's how we mix together in communities and support each other. Outcome. God, that's a technical one, isn't it? Change. We talk, and I think we have the same phrase in all languages, about changing lives. What did you do in your social enterprise? I changed the lives of the people I'm working with. That change is the outcome. It's taking someone from this track and moving them to here. It's taking how they feel inside and changing it. Outcome is change. And impact is the extent to which it's down to you. The extent to which you brought value to that process. And I've put up there the definitions from the European Commission. Right. A few factors within that social impact. First of all, it's deliberate. We're deliberately going out there to make these changes happen. Secondly, We need to look at the whole effect. It's not just enough to look at the effect on a child of support in school, but what happens to their family, to their brothers and sisters, their communities. We need to think of the positives and the negatives, and we need to judge against a benchmark of what would have happened otherwise. I don't know if there is a Latvian term for the most awful phrase, counterfactual. We have this whole field seems to have developed its own language of completely unintelligible words. Counterfactual. It's an English word, and when I heard it, I thought, what on earth are they talking about? It's changing from here to here. The from here is the counterfactual. Why didn't you tell me? So, measuring it. Oh, that was good. There we go. It's good when you've got someone at the back really in charge. Measuring. What do? We need to tell the story. We need to tell the story of what someone's life was like before and what it's like next. Those of you who work in social enterprises, are you familiar with the stories of the people you work with? That's what we need to do to measure. And we can then look in at that story from different viewpoints. You think of it like a lantern, one of those four-sided lanterns with a light in the middle, and we look in through the different coloured glass on the different sides. And it looks different, but it's the same in the centre. It's the same story, and we look from different angles. And we can then put values or effects on those as long as we remember that the value, the pounds value, the euro value, is not the real outcome. It's the lives. We're just trying to explain better what the effect is. So, what I've put up here is a little diagram about how the values look different from different perspectives. And we need to put on the value, we need to tell the story in the way that appeals to the audience that we're talking to. So, I've been looking at a project in the UK where a group of housing associations are getting together and they are running courses to help older people, normally over 85 years old, not to fall over. For us, we fall over in the street and it hurts. And we get up and dust down and it's okay. If you're 85 and you fall over, you will probably go into hospital for quite a long time. You may break your hip, you may be very ill, and you may end up going into care and not back to your own home. It's a big life-changing event. So if we can stop people falling over, this is empowering. So, we're valuing it through all this lot. In the narrow, looking really close into the detail, we're looking for the hospitals. They don't have these older people with broken hips in the beds being operated on. So it's a saving for them. They don't want to have to do this. We then go a little bit wider. We're looking at support from care homes and within the community medical care. We go wider still. If the old people are still living in their homes, they communicate. They are part of the local economy. They go down to the shops. They buy things locally. They work within their communities. And then we look more widely. How do they feel? The limited view. Does this make a... Does this do a dot? No, maybe not. Limited view social impact. How do they feel themselves? All right, for the hospital, worried about blocking up beds, how do the old people feel? And then we can look, these elderly do not live in isolation. They've got grandchildren. Don't the grandchildren want their grandparents around? We can look at the impact on their lives. A few more of these terms. Now, this is really stretching our poor translators. Inputs. That's the resources that we bring to our work. Money, your knowledge, your contacts, your organisation. Activities. We do things for people. Outputs. Those activities relate to the people we're trying to help. We meet them. And it creates outcomes, change. And we've contributed to that, our impact. Can I turn over? There we go. Why do we want to know? Is there anyone here other than me who will admit to coming from the finance world originally? Yes, a few brave people. We don't often admit it in these fora, do we? So we're familiar with financial accounting, where we know that we're meant to keep an account of where the money has gone. Social impact measurement is about keeping account of where the social side has gone. It enables us to manage the effectiveness of our work. If we know what achieves that outcome, exactly what we've done to achieve it, we can choose which outcome for which people, and we can do it more effectively by using resources more carefully. So it's tremendously powerful. Okay. This is the only slide where I'm allowed a mathematical symbol on the slide. It's only there for my well-being, to make me feel happy. So, impact. We add up all the outcomes, all the changes, and we deduct three things. Yes, but it would have happened anyway. Nothing to do with us. Dead weight. Yes, but we didn't do all of it. Alternative attribution. Somebody else helped. Yes, but we caused environmental damage by building the new factory and creating the jobs. There's a displacement. How do we go about it? First of all, number one, setting the objectives. We decide what we're trying to measure and why. Who are we trying to impress? Who are we trying to persuade? Secondly, we look at stakeholders, and I think some of the other speakers will be picking up on this later on. Who's interested? Who's concerned? Why are they concerned? What do they need to know? If a decision is not going to be based on what you're measuring, it's not worth measuring it. Then we work out how to measure it. Number 3. Must be really difficult reading English for a Latvian when it's upside down. It's worse than me trying to read the Irish earlier on. Fourthly, we verify and value the impact we've received, which is a research function, but it's something you can do. And finally, we monitor and report. And we bear in mind that as soon as you report information, you influence the reader. This is an opportunity to engage with people, to persuade, to get their support. Standardization. Great idea. It helps us communicate consistently, to tell our stories in a way that engages better. And it's easier to measure in some ways if we have a standard approach to it. However, it can also end up with the process becoming everything and the understanding becoming nothing. European Commission, perhaps for once, the European Commission decided when setting impact measurement standards to ask us, the sector. So the experts group was actually a group from our social sector from academia and other supporters. So I would like to think they've come up with something that is very supportive of social enterprise. It says we'll have a standard process for measuring. It's actually those 5 steps in the circle earlier on. And we will have a standard approach to reporting, to presenting the information, which is actually good research standard reporting. Explain what you've done, explain how you measured it. I think we can live with that. Frameworks and indicators. Wouldn't it be helpful in children's work or in the work for the elderly if we knew that across Europe most people were tending to focus on 5 or 6 key things that they were trying to measure? That would enable us to communicate. Now, if we were allowed to go with those, unless we could see a good reason why we shouldn't, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? And if we didn't go with those because of a good reason, all we have to do is explain why. That's what the standard says. I think it's helpful. I'm going to skip over this a little bit, and you can come and bounce me at lunchtime. The G7 group, thankfully, that was a really fun debate. Europe versus the US, did I say that? They agreed, so that's good. Right. How are we doing for time, ladies and gents? We're okay? Good, because I want to get to the case study as well, or else Yeva will thump me. Oh, that was fun. Can we come back to that? Thank you. Did I do that? It's a combination of us. Teamwork. Okay. Performance measurement. Performance measurement. Oh, it sounds so businessy, doesn't it? But actually, if we're going to deliver the massive changes that we all achieve with such short resources, we need to be quite efficient and quite focused. So, how do we use impact for performance measurement? First of all, can you see the red line up there? Where we're measuring outcomes, these may happen way in the future. The children that I work with at home and in It's All About Me, we're looking at outcomes running through into their adults' lives and into the lives of their children. So we're looking 40-year measurement terms. I cannot manage a service now based on what will happen in 40 years' time. So I need a milestone between now and then so that I know I'm on the right track. In the adoption bond service, we recognise that if we get a child into a therapeutic home where every minute of parenting delivers therapy through the parenting, I think when you go back home and talk to your children how that may be, and the child stays there for at least 2 years, we know we're on the right track. Within 2 years, these homes explode in a shower of sparks and the child goes back into care or it starts to work. So at 2 years, this is the only reason they have a tall person doing this, so I can do that. At 2 years, we know we're on the right track. And so I can measure whether the child is still there at 2 years and know that the outcome is likely to be achieved. So, what are we doing? In this big circle down here, we're deciding what is the outcome we wish to achieve. We're understanding how it's caused. We're assessing over what timescales are we going to see that starting to happen. And we can then develop those milestones on the way along, which then give us a chance of measurement. Have you noticed I haven't given you a single number with a euro sign in front of it yet? Does this tell you about what's important, telling the story and understanding how it happens, or placing a value on it? The value is very, very important in being able to engage with financial markets, with public authorities as to how they're spending their money, but it's not the heart of impact measurement. The other one I just wanted, or two I'll just flag here. If you're setting these milestones, they're good ones, good performance indicators, if they appear naturally in the flow of activity. All the ones we've used in the adoption bond are normal statutory documents that are produced as part of the childcare system. The other thing is, everything we're doing here affects behaviours, and not just in the people that we work with in the social enterprise. This affects government. This affects funders. This affects the general public and how they behave towards us. So your reporting is very powerful, very sensitive. Fantastic tool. Okay, impact measurement in action. Now, I wanted to give you a sense of what can come out of an impact measurement study. In 2009, 2010, one of those 60, that's aging me fast, studies that Michael mentioned was looking at what is the impact of therapeutic permanence in adoption and fostering. Now, that's really cruel to give to the translators. What effect does it have if you put a child into a permanent home they can call their own with therapy embedded? If you measure, if you know how it happens, that always asks the question, so what are you going to do about it? It's fine to measure it. If you don't deliver it, we don't care. So this is now about what we've been doing to deliver it, and we're just going to show a short video clip which is the opening sequence from a BBC documentary that was produced in 2010 about Maisie, a little girl called Maisie, who is very, very damaged, very challenging little girl and is moving into her new home. And I will make the point, because Yeva didn't pick it up when she came to Helsinki. The man in the video is actually a younger version of me. When you have that many daughters, you get grey very quickly. Thank you.
Fingers, 10 tiny toes, 2 lovely eyes, and a little button of feet, my gentle.
7-year-old Maisie wants to be adopted.
I am a nice girl. I like to play with my toys.
But several families have tried and given her back, and she doesn't believe she'll ever find a home.
I like to dance and I like to talk. I do. And be naughty, but not very much.
Her luck changed last year when she met an extraordinary couple who've already adopted 8 of the most damaged kids in care, and they decided to give her another chance.
For us, it wasn't about this pretty, attractive child who likes doing lots of things. It was about this hurt child that we thought we could help. And do you believe that we are going to adopt you? And that this is going to be your forever family that never sends you away? Yeah?
In her first 4 years, Maisie lived through a lot of violence. Since then, she's had one family after another, and it's left her feeling vulnerable and angry.
I hate my life is one of her key phrases, or I'm just a nobody, I'm a screwed up piece of paper.
Shut up! Everyone beats at you.
Sue and Jim want to be the family that Maisie can stay with forever. But even they accept that they may not be able to turn her around.
Could it
all go wrong from here. Our inner belief in ourselves says no. Our heads say, yeah.
What happens over the next 12 months will determine the rest of Maisie's life. If Sue and Jim can't make it work, she'll spend the rest of her childhood in care.
I'm very posh. Pleased to meet you.
Now, Maisie, or her real name
Tiny
is
fingers,
Maisie is a nickname.
tiny toes,
She is
and
up the extreme end of the sort of challenging children that are caught in the care system. Part of her history is that this adoption, and it's a very, very good, very powerful documentary that the BBC produced. It explains how this is her third attempt at adoption. She's broken 5 foster placements and 2 adoptions already, and she has a history of attempted suicide at the age of 7. So it's a very strong story about a very extreme little girl. However, we have... Sorry, I'll go back on that one. We have that same situation occurring time and time again for lots of little Maisies who are nowhere near quite as challenging, but are still older, in sibling groups, from black and minority ethnic groups, and are finding it very hard to find therapeutic families, but desperately need them. The long-term prognosis, the counterfactual, is that these children will have a 74% probability of being not in education or employment by the time they're 16 to 19. They stand a 30-something% probability of being in prison by the time they're 20. And we are civilized democracies. So, very sadly, my wife and I can't adopt all the children in the UK, much as I'm sure we would love to. So one of the things, together with the voluntary sector in the UK, we've done is to develop a social impact bond that will tackle this for the thousands of Maisies that we have in the UK. Social impact bond, what is one of these? It's a contract for delivering services. It's not a financial instrument. It's a contract for services. It deliberately creates social outcomes, which is what we're all trying to do with income, and it gets paid normally by a public body, but doesn't have to be when it delivers those outcomes. And like a children's toy with its battery in the back, it has its finance package in the back of it. So it's self-financing an entity in itself. It's all about me, and do visit the website and see what's going on. There are around 7,000 children a year where the public authorities in the UK, of which there are 154, are seeking adoptive homes. Families who will take them on permanently, pay for them, support them, develop them in the normal way that perhaps many of you do with your own children. Out of those 7,000 or more a year, 2,000 of those children don't find families at all. We have millions of adults in our community, millions, and we can't find a family for 2,000 kids. I think that's appalling. So, why does this happen? Well, this is despite the point that a child in state care in the UK costs present value around €1 million for the state to keep in the care system, and they merely hold the time until they can get them into prison, which costs even more. So this is a horrendously expensive problem. Parents generally don't pick these children because they didn't know older children were available. They didn't know. They thought it was special parents, and it's not. It's normal parents. It's normal adults who've got a big heart. And they were scared at the lack of support. So we said, if we can get the whole of the UK's voluntary sector within this area working together to create a virtual market in which all those behaviours are changed, all the bits that don't work are changed and work differently in this market, that would work. So that's what we've done. The public authorities pay by results. The service costs them £54,000. Sorry, this is where I go into pounds so that I recognise the figures. And that's roughly twice the normal price for an adoptive placement, the work that has to be done to create a placement. They pay £54,000. They save £50,000 a year for the whole of the child's minority up until the age of 18. To do this, we've created this market where each one of the voluntary sector providers that is in the scheme can contract directly with a single public authority about a single child. The authority social worker says, I want a home for little Johnny, little boy. Who's going to find that for me? I'll just have a contract directly with you to go and find this family for this child and train the parents to deliver the parenting that will meet that child's needs. The work is funded by a central UK-wide fund that then each time there is a contract signed for a particular child, it advances the money to the voluntary sector, to the social enterprise to deliver the services, and then takes the money from the public authority when they pay. 46,500 goes down, 54,000 comes back up, and the difference pays for the infrastructure, but also pays for the first 10% that don't make it. Hopefully, it's not placements that break down children that go into care. But it could be simply that we don't find a family for this particular child. So the fund carries the first 10%. The providers carry the excess with unlimited risk. That's okay, because they're controlling it. They know what they're doing. They know very well when they see a child's profile whether they can place that child, so they can control that risk. And you can ask me about that one in the interval, but that one scares the social workers because it's all the funding. So, how's it doing? We're 11 months in. We've been going for 11 months. The network is developing well. The first registrations, local authorities saying, yes, please, for my child, happened after 6 weeks. Psychological reports, which are done as a matter of course in this bond, actually take over 6 months in the UK just to get the first appointment. Here they're being fully delivered within 6 weeks. That's saying something to the market. It's now 66 children have been referred to it, 22 are already on our books and registered. First child has moved into their new home already, and there's more coming through in the pipeline. It's growing, it's developing, and people are changing their minds because of it. So, can you see the lives we're changing for the children and the families? And how does this reflect on what you could be doing? We measured the impact, we continue to measure the impact, and we're achieving that. So it's lives changed. Children go into new homes, behaviours are changed in the marketplaces. The adoptive homes survive, even with Maisie. costs are saved from the state and the whole of the infrastructure starts to learn about what's possible. So, impact. Understand it, deliver it, measure it if it's helpful, but above all, value and treasure it as it matters.
Wow. When you see those, I don't know if lawyers have the same reputation in Latvia, but in the UK and in Ireland probably they have a reputation of having no heart. Lawyers are heartless. So when you find that definition in the dictionary, you'll probably see a picture of Jim's face, proving that this is not true. We have time for questions for Jim before we come to Adam. So, we have 2 microphones. This is very advanced.
Oh, that's
great. Well, I've got a question about culture and about children in general. Don't you think that the reason of these homeless people in Britain is actually unawareness of the society and cultural problems? Because, for example, in the Caucasus, there are no homeless children, and every family, it's duty for every family to adopt a homeless child. So there aren't even houses for homeless children in Caucasus. So maybe it's better to invest into the cultural questions in Britain than into some laws to give money to families.
I think you're absolutely right. It is a huge sadness to many of us in the UK, France, Germany are similar, that we have lost something that some other countries have retained and treasured. There seems to be, there is no sense of shared responsibility about supporting families within your community. There is a lack of intergenerational support within our culture now, and that has emerged from the 1950s to 60s, particularly through the 70s. It would be lovely to be able to work to change that culture. I think that is perhaps a false hope for us. I'm not sure that we can ever go back to that because we're trying to embed care right the way through society, although there has been a move back towards a more caring society since 2008. So maybe that was one good thing that happened out of the financial crisis. I think what we are left with is partly trying to draw ourselves back to more collective caring, but then accepting that there are some areas that are not going to, where that problem is not going to be met, and we deal with it here. The children that we're talking about here, on the whole, have come from generations, several generations of family failure. My eldest daughter, when she had her first child, on the child's first birthday, she said to me, "This is marvellous. I'm the first in 4 generations of my birth family to keep and not abuse my child." So I think when we have that deeply ingrained cultural problem, we have to find these other fixes in the hope that we can get the bigger fix later. Don't lose the bit that you've retained, please.
Thank you. More questions? We have 2 over here and 1 here. I'll give mine and then I'll come.
Thank you. Igor Vatolin, journalist. I would ask you about the scale of those fostering activities. So your story was about UK context, but do we in European Union look forward to make possible such fostering activities in the scale of EU, or further on, perhaps there are very many parentless children in Africa, for example, quite healthy, but they don't have enough resource just to to become to become healthy grown-ups. So, about the scale.
Okay, the scale in terms of global responsibility is that there should never be a child anywhere in the world for whom this is the story. However, as the gentleman over here said, the adoption fostering question is a lesser issue here because of the strength of family support. But maybe, I'm sure there are other issues, maybe alcoholism, maybe homelessness, maybe people out of the prison system, for which similar sorts of stories, similar interventions, similar support, and similar impact focus are relevant. We've got to take these interventions and make them relevant to the society in which they're operating and to meet the problems of that society. So to come to your point about Africa, I would certainly not advocate for removing children from Africa and adopting them in the UK, in Latvia, or in any other country. I would certainly advocate for supporting cultural change if we can, if not direct intervention that supports those children in their own families and in their own communities. If we can meet the needs of these younger children, they have survived so much, they grow up positive to become very powerful. They will be the next generation of social entrepreneurs if we get to them.
There was another question behind you. Thank you.
Hello, Inga. I'm here. Hello, I'm Inga from Goodwill Projects, Lithuania. Very good scheme you made with this program. My question is, how did react all the unions or employees from the orphan children houses? I mean, with this scheme, you take their job from them. Did you have any, protests?
Okay. Another cultural backdrop. For the most part, in the UK, the children who are awaiting adoption are not in orphanages. Most of them we have fostering, which is where the government pays parents in their own homes to have the child living with them. And then adoption, which is where you take the child and you pay for them yourself and they become legally your own as if they were born to you. So most of these children are being paid, the people are being paid to care for them in their own home. Then you get the worry of, but are they going to lose their income? No, because we also have a problem that we have not enough places in people's own home for all the children that are being neglected or abused in their current situation. So we are leaving children too long in a difficult situation and not taking them out and supporting them. But that's a very good example of the displacement point, the plus and minus that I was talking about earlier on, that we do need to think about before you put in place an intervention.
Thank you. There was one. And Yeva has reminded me that sometimes Latvians are shy. So if you want to, thank you. If you want to ask your question in Latvian, then we can. We won't translate, but she will translate.
Okay. I have a question about finance because I see that it works well in the UK, but I would love to have the system, in Latvia. But how could you actually fund all of this if the government is not that supportive, maybe? And how do you see that the financial part working in other contexts, maybe that don't have these social securities things?
Okay. There are two bits of finance to make any of these additional interventions work. First one is somebody who will pay for the outcomes. So it's a revenue, an income point. And the second one is who will finance the work until we get that outcomes payment. The first one needs to be solved from within Latvia. They need to be outcomes that are desired within Latvia and where there is a party, be it the government or somebody else, who will pay once those outcomes are achieved. Now, if we can relate the achievement of the outcome to a saving of cost, people who go in and out of prison a lot, that's very expensive in any country. If we can get them out of that pattern, that saves money. So once they have ceased that pattern, the government or the prison service may be prepared to pay. This is one route to look at. We're also looking in the UK at other potential funders. Some large corporates, some of the large banks are starting to pay those outcomes payments for certain interventions where the government can't or won't. So that's the first one. Who will pay when the outcome is achieved? And it needs to be somebody for whom that is valuable, worth having. The other one is the funding. Who will fund? And there you can look much more widely. You can look across Europe. There are a range of European funds, cross-border funds that will fund work in Latvia, that will invest in work in Latvia if you have the outcomes payment sorted out. So I think the capital availability is not the problem we have globally. It is quality of intervention and knowing what creates the impact and then getting someone to pay for the outcome.
If I might just add one thing to... Is that okay?
Cool.
Jim talked about how we value. And unfortunately, to some degree, governments, for those of us that have been social entrepreneurs, that have sat in front of governments and said, this is a fantastic thing to do, isn't it? And often civil servants will look at you as if to say, yeah, but... And if you can use this type of mechanism to say, well, look, if we intervene here, look what it saves you. Suddenly people who may not be interested are interested. So it's a very useful mechanism. It may seem, kind of ethereal on one level, but it's very useful to be able to say, this is how we measure value. These interventions are about lives. They're not about euro signs or pound signs or dollar signs. But we appreciate that governments work in constrained resources and in a different way. This is what we can do for you if you support this initiative. So there's a mixed language sometimes in dealing with government. We've run out of time in terms of questioning Jim. He's not going to eat at lunchtime, just so he's available to you. So please say thank you.
That's fantastic.
He's asked me not to call him doctor, but I am going to say doctor, because he worked very hard. Adam is a special advisor on social impacts at the Furniture Resource Centre Group in Liverpool. He's worked with them for almost 10 years to develop the use of social return on investment and to develop that framework for them. Adam is a member of the Social Return on Investment UK Council and is currently working with a whole range of organisations in the third sector to help them prove and improve their social impacts. In addition to his work with those civil society type organisations, Adam also teaches at York University's Management School. Over to you.
Thank you. Ooh, that sounds very loud. Is that sounding okay? Brill. Thank you very much. An amazing presentation to follow on from. So yes, as a teacher, I start with my intended learning outcomes. And the way I'd introduce myself, I was trying to decide... I asked if you understood the word geek. I was told that no, but nerd apparently is an understandable word, so I'm calling myself an SROI nerd for today. What I would say, though, is that you don't need to be a specialist. You don't need to be a technocrat to have a go at measuring social impacts. So what I would like to do today is take on the ideas that Jim's introduced and look at tell a story, I guess, the story of how we at the FRC Group, the Furniture Resource Centre, have measured but ultimately managed our social impacts. And I've highlighted that word for a really important purpose. I believe it is very important to measure your social impacts, and there is that external ability to communicate those impacts for funders, for interested stakeholders, but also, and perhaps ultimately for us as a social enterprise, we want to improve on our social impacts. We want to create more social impacts. And fundamentally, we can't do it better unless we understand what we're doing to start with. So, is that right? Yes, so the Furniture Resource Centre is 26 years old. We started in 1988. I wasn't there at the very beginning. And we started as a charity, a very traditional charity. We in Liverpool, I say we, I wasn't there again, but there was a need for people to be provided with low-cost furniture. People living on very low incomes had very poor access to good quality furniture. There was also another problem in Liverpool, in the northwest of England, that lots of furniture was being dumped on the streets, fly tipping. Somebody had the great idea of putting 2 and 2 together, and they came up with 4. They understood that we could take this unwanted furniture and provide it to people on low incomes through trade. When we started as a charity, we've morphed, we've grown, we've transformed into a range of social enterprises or social businesses. And there's our social mission. And again, highlighting the key word, and it's as though myself and Jim have coordinated this, because it is very much about people. We run businesses that create profits and opportunities to change the lives of people living in poverty and unemployment. We are not scared to say we want to make a profit. Profit is not a dirty word in social enterprise. We use that profit and we reinvest it, as the definitions of social enterprise say. But we reinvest it for the benefit of our key beneficiaries, our people. Fundamentally, no matter how we've diversified as an organisation, we are still around those 2 core aims: providing employment and training opportunities to people who are long-term unemployed, and the provision of furniture to people on low incomes, or as it suggests, people in poverty. These are some of the illustrations of our organisation. Effectively, what we do, one of our main businesses is called Bulky Bobs, the purple lorry you see at the bottom of the screen. Bulky Bobs collects unwanted furniture, bulky, large pieces of furniture. So if you have a settee or a fridge or freezer or cooker that you no longer want, you ring Liverpool City Council and we will come and collect it from you for free. We take it back to our warehouse, where it is reused, if possible, and sold on through our shop. We sell the furniture at discounts. If anybody is in receipt of any form of benefit, be they a student or a pensioner, they receive 10% discount. They're very, very competitive prices anyway, but we understand that people on low incomes perhaps cannot afford our prices. I don't know what the comparison is, but you can get a 3-piece suite from our shop for about £60. Is that about €70? If you're in receipt of any sort of benefits, you get 10% discount. Other people are referred to as in more crisis situations. If you're referred to as a crisis person, you get the furniture for free. We will give you everything that you need to fully furnish your home. As well as providing the furniture to people, the guy you can see driving the forklift truck, and also in the lorry, in each lorry there are 3 people: the driver and 2 trainees. The trainees in the warehouse and in the lorries are provided with 12 months paid training, the intermediate labour market. We provide them with 12 months training from long-term unemployment and support them into sustainable employment. We've been very successful over the years. We take around 15 to 20 trainees each year, and at least 70% of those are successful into sustained employment. We know that because we ask them. We ask them for at least 18 months when they complete the training program. So again, it's that long-term impact. So we take furniture, we provide training and employment, we support people into employment and provide that furniture to people in poverty. And it is a real problem in Liverpool and in other parts of the UK. We have worked with other councils in different parts of the UK, and we The way we can collect the furniture for free is because we have a trade relationship with the council. We generated about 97% of our income through trade last year, only 3% through grants and donations. And we know we do good things. We are absolutely convinced we do good things. In fact, if you walk into our reception, it says it in great big letters. We do good things. But it's not enough for us as an organisation to be confident in that. We need to be able to measure, demonstrate and improve our performance. We know we do good things, but we want to do even better things. So we've been going for 26 years, and for 15 of those years, we've measured and reported on our social impacts. We started quite traditionally in the UK by producing social impact reports, or CSR reports if you like. 15 years later, we've developed and refined our process. I started the journey with SROI in 2006, 2007. And social return on investment, I will spend some time talking about in a couple of slides, although I have seen there's a workshop later today on the theory of change. So without wanting to influence you, I think that would be a really good workshop to attend. We've also, this year, or last financial year, produced our first set of integrated accounts that are fully audited as well. We're now at a stage where we've combined our economic and our social impacts together. Fundamentally, we are a social business. We are a social enterprise. We have a primary social purpose, as I've already explained. We're not scared about making profits. We want to, because they're reinvested. But we need to be able to measure that performance. We've started now to develop things further. And we have developed social value budgets. Again, this is the SROI nerd in me. I'm very excited by all of these ideas. But we are accountable to our key beneficiaries, our people who are long-term unemployed and people living in poverty. Those are the people we're accountable to. And as a social business, how can we say we are accountable to those people if we are not able to demonstrate the social performance, those social impacts? I have often wondered where we are on this sort of evolutionary map. I don't think we're here yet. We're certainly making some sort of developments. We're not at a stage yet where we can say it's perfect. We develop and we refine this each year. And the way we do that is by asking our key stakeholders. As Jim's already outlined this morning, we need to ask the people that matter, what are the outcomes? What are those impacts that we've created as an organisation? Be they positive or negative, intended or unintended. If we want to measure those things, if we want to do our good things, we need to be able to understand them, ultimately to improve them as well. So how do we do that? We use social return on investment. Is this something that people are familiar with? Just to give me an idea. Hands up if you've seen SROI before. Oh, well, I can finish now then. That's fantastic. Thank you. Social return on investment is a way of monetizing outcomes. But that's not everything. The monetary symbol at the end, and I've used pound signs rather than euro signs, as you'll see in a moment, is a way of communicating impact in a familiar language. It is, rightly so, the end result. But the important thing is the story, understanding what has changed for people and their lives, because that is what we are about. We are an organisation that are focused on people and the impacts on those people. So, the geeky formula says social return on investment is the value of benefits divided by the net present value of investment. Very much like the cost-benefit analysis. What did you get out of it, divided by what you put into it? I almost changed this, and I called it, and I don't know if this will translate very well, so apologies, a sausage machine. You put things in, and you get things out. The inputs through to the outcomes. Excuse me. It is a story of change with both quantitative and qualitative information. The number in itself is meaningless. We can see that if we do a ratio of return, as an example, a ratio of 3 to 1 suggests that for each £1 or €1 invested, there are £3 of social value created. So what? If I was just to say to you, here's a financial investment opportunity, and there's a 3 to 1 ratio, would you invest? I'd hope you'd. I see one nod. But if that was all the information I gave you, I will give you £3 for each £1 invested. Surely you'd want to see the story behind. Surely you'd want to understand the story, the assumptions, any estimations that have been made. Financial accounting, of course, is not without its slight problems, shall we say. SROI is not immune to those either. I like to think that the difference, perhaps, between social accounting and financial accounting, and apologies to the finance people in the room, is transparency, honesty, perhaps, or additional transparency and additional honesty. What it does is to develop these theories of change, the stories. What happened to you? What experiences did you experience as a result of your involvement with these activities? Were they positive? Were they negative? Were they intended or unintended? But it is more than just monetizing those outcomes. And I'm going to show some examples of how you can monetize those examples. There are people that I know who say you can and should monetize everything. I see a scowl there on the front row. I see 2 scowls. I believe you can monetize everything. Whether you should is a different question. Now I'm getting affirmative nods, so I'm happy. But what we are saying, again, this fundamentally, we are accountable to our key beneficiaries. If we want to be able to demonstrate our value and make things better for the lives of our beneficiaries, we need to improve our social value. Social impact is more important than our financial impact. Financial, we need. And as an indication, we turned over about £4.5 million last year. And for the first year in 3, we also made a profit. So we were very happy. But what we did with that profit was to reinvest it into our people, was to decide where to invest it. So I'd now ask the question, if you don't understand the social impacts you are creating, how would you know where and how to invest your financial profit? We as an organisation have a number of different training programs. We have some money. Fantastic. Where do we invest it? Do we go with Project A, Project B, or Project C? Do we just use rule of thumb? Do we estimate? Do we think, I understand, I know this, I know it's that project? Or do we, as a more sophisticated approach, if you like, understand the different value that those different projects create? Therefore, we are able to maximize our social impacts. Somebody's stolen my slide already this morning. Sorry. I won't dwell on this, but this is my sausage machine. I changed it to telling the stories of impacts. I thought it was a bit more appropriate. But you put things in. And we as an organisation invest financial resource. We also invest our time, skills, commitment. We also ask our trainees and our beneficiaries to invest. Their time is important as well. Their commitment, their energy, their passion are also important. And we get outputs. This summary, if you like, of the quantitative things, the easy-to-measure things. We know that 15, generally males, not exclusively though, 15 people will graduate from our training program each year. The output. So what? I'm almost thinking of this is now in my head the so what proposition. So what 15 people complete the training program? If they don't make their journey into employment, how effective is our training program? It's the outcomes that matter. As I know it was going to say. Only by measuring those outcomes are we able to understand how successful or not we have been as an organisation. So we may have people that graduate from our training program, but if all 15 don't find work, if all 15 go back into the welfare system, has their lives been changed? Not significantly enough, I would suggest. And we know that 70% of our trainees do graduate and go into successful employment. How do we know that? We ask them. We don't assume, we don't estimate, we don't hope, we certainly don't overclaim. We don't overclaim that everybody graduates and goes into employment, because that is not realistic. One of the key principles of social return on investment is to involve and engage stakeholders. Only by asking those stakeholders what has changed in your lives are we able to understand those outcomes. Did you find work? What other outcomes perhaps have you achieved as well? It's not just about work. Some of our other training programs, the people are not ready to go into work. They are further away from the job, from the marketplace, if you like. Maybe unemployed for decades, having lots of social problems as well. We have a lot of people coming to us with things that make them unattractive to traditional employers. By asking those people what has changed and what's important, we are able to understand that. So, we have the output. People complete the training program, 15, 20 people each year. So what? They go into sustained employment. That's the outcome measure. And we know again that around 70% of our guys, our trainees, go into employment. What social return on investment then says is, okay, you understand the outcome, you have the indicator is employment. What's the value of that? What's the monetary value of that outcome? And that's where social return on investment differs to a lot of other outcome measurements. It takes it that step further, and it monetizes those changes. Any ideas how? I think this is the more straightforward one. This is the teacher in me. I'm asking for responses. It's that Latvian shyness again, isn't it? Well, they change their income. These people were previously supported by our welfare system, and hopefully now they're in a job that doesn't require that support, or shall we say less support. What we are not saying is that these people are now earning, let's say, £15,000. Aren't we fantastic? £15,000 of impact. It's the change. It's the change in income. If the person, the individual, was earning £5,000 previously, the difference is £10,000. The 15 minus the 5,000. It's the change in income for individuals. But they're not the only stakeholder that has benefited from that change. The national government will also benefit from people being in employment. There will be an increase in tax and a reduction in welfare expenditure. Any SROI nerds in the room yet? Any converts? This, I would say, is the easiest or most straightforward way of monetizing changes. Somebody's income has changed. It's relatively easy for us to measure. What if there's a different change? What if it's not so straightforward? What if it's a softer change, if you like? So from the same output, the same individual may have a different outcome. An outcome that they have increased confidence and self-esteem. Perhaps they've increased their relationships. Perhaps their well-being has improved. Can we and should we measure those in a financial respect? I now see some absolute shakes of the head. What I would say before I show an example of this is, SROI is not a way of saying that this is a true monetary value. We are not saying that I could walk into a shop and buy confidence off the shelf or self-esteem. If you could, life would be so much easier. What we are saying is we want to represent those changes, those outcomes, in a way that is meaningful and understandable. It's understandable to external stakeholders, our funders, but also it's a way of us being able to compare apples with apples. How did that one go in translation? Great. We have our inputs, we have our investments, which are generally financial. By translating that denominator, that bottom part, sorry, the top part, even the numerator, into the same language, we are able to compare our investments with our outcomes. No longer at the Furniture Resource Centre do we say that the investment cost us X and we got 10 people into jobs and 3 people found confidence. What we now say is, well, let's try and find a way of monetising those non-tangible outcomes. I won't ask for any sort of assistance with this one. There are a number of ways you can value these things. And again, it is not a direct cost value, it's an approximation, an approximation of value. And there are a number of ways we can do this. One suggestion is this. In the UK, and I'm sure in many parts of the world, if you're feeling a bit low in confidence, you can sign up for a confidence course. You can go and do 6 weeks, 1 day a week, on a confidence course. And there is a market value to that confidence course. Similarly, with self-esteem, with improving well-being, happiness, whatever the outcome may be, there are generally market alternatives, if you like. I always use the same example as well. This is the idea that we can perhaps value anything. Whether we should or not is the question that remains. The value of friendships. In the UK, again, I think it's Europe-wide, there is this program called, ready for this one? Rent a Friend. It is a legitimate service. It's not a service that some of you may be thinking it is. If you move to a new city and you don't know anybody, you can rent a friend. There's a value of £11 an hour. The question I always ask is, well, how many hours do you have to pay for that person before they become your true friend? Imagine 4 months down the line and you're still paying to meet your friend. It sounds a bit strange. But again, it's a way of representing those changes in a familiar language. The outcomes we deal with are very much around confidence, self-esteem, employability. Again, as an example, if we increase somebody's employability, not the employment, well, how else could they have got that change? That's the question we ask. If you didn't come here and come on our program, what else could you have done, or what else could somebody else have done to experience that same change? Employability, you could go on a particular training program, a CV building workshop perhaps. There are market alternatives, and if there aren't, there are still other ways to find those financial approximations. I guess the thing that this also shows is that it demonstrates the impact for our trainees. We would also consider other material stakeholders. I would ask the trainee, who else in your life has this impact upon? And what they may say is, well, I have a much better family relationship. So family, another key stakeholder. I'm now a more active citizen in the local economy. Maybe the local economy is an important stakeholder. The national economy is equally an important stakeholder. We absolutely ask the questions around the counterfactual, the deadweight, the displacement, and the attribution. This is not all down to us at the FRC. We know full well that the individuals that come on our training program are supported by their family, their friends, and other agencies. They deserve credit also for the impact. But ultimately, these are the things that are ignored. The confidence, the self-esteem. In traditional performance or impact measurement, these are the things that are totally ignored. I like to think that SROI is a way of giving a voice to the voiceless. It provides an opportunity to understand what has changed for those people. And it's people that are not asked traditionally. My little picture up there is to remind me and to remind everybody that stakeholders are central to this. I would not assume any of this without asking my stakeholders first. And it may sound like an onerous task. People may be sat there thinking, I couldn't possibly do all this. You've been doing this for 10, 15 years. I bet you collect a lot of this information anyway. As a social enterprise, as a third sector organisation, you will probably collect a lot of that information. You may not have all of the outcomes, but I'd ask the question, why not? If, like us, you're around getting people into employment, you will measure how many people go into employment. Equally, when we're providing furniture to people on low incomes, we need to know that we are delivering it to people on low incomes and not people perhaps just after a bargain. We need to measure those changes. Why? The title I was given today is Why Does Social Impact Matter? And it matters to us as an organisation because we know we do good things, but we want to do even better things. We want to ensure that we maximise our social value. We want to empower our key stakeholders, our key beneficiaries. Only by asking those questions are we able to do so. There is the external potential. Yes, we can demonstrate our social impacts to our funders. And next year, we go for a contract renewal in Liverpool. And Bulky Bobs, we will shout about our social return on investment. For each £1 invested, we will create lots of social value, I'm sure. It improves our stakeholder relationships. We're very happy with that. But internally, this is where we started to really understand the value of valuing, I guess. We used to shout very loudly about our impact. We shout less about it now. We use it internally for our decision making. Again, the idea that if we have 2 projects or 3 projects that we would like to invest in, but we simply can't afford to do everything, we use social return on investment to compare projects A, B, and C. Which creates the most social impact? It has allowed us to make some very difficult decisions, but some very beneficial decisions as well. We had the great situation that partway through last financial year, we knew we were going to make profit. And as a social business, profit is secondary to our social mission. So we had a situation where 3 senior managers presented to our board. They presented to our board on a proposal for investment based on the social impact of that investment. The fantastic thing was we had enough profit to provide all 3 with funding. That's just because they were very good. We understand what works, and we understand what doesn't work. We're quite honest about things. As well as measuring the positives, we also measure the negatives. Here's a question. What about those 30% of people that don't find work? We're very happy with the 70% that do. What about those other 30%? Those 3-4 people each year? Do we ignore those? Do we just write them off and say, well, 70% is good enough? No. We measure that social impact as well. That's our development. We are trying to understand why those people didn't find work and look at improving that. I think the way we will probably go is have some sort of recap with those people where we invite them back to the organisation so we can try and work with them again, perhaps not on a 12-month process, but a short-term intervention, if you like, to improve things. It certainly improves employee cohesion. Again, you don't need somebody like me to come in and do this all of the time. You can, I thought that was a laugh then. Excuse me. You can, the power through impact measurement is around embedding those processes within the organisation. Embedding those processes within the organisation means that you take ownership of those ideas. It means that people are involved. It means that people within the organisation understand their role in creating social value. Those people not directly involved with our trainees still input information into our social metrics. They know that they contribute to the social value. We can decide where to invest our resources, because ultimately, again, I keep saying this, but I feel so passionate about it. We are accountable to our key beneficiaries. If we are truly accountable to them, from an ethical perspective, We need to be able to demonstrate that value and improve that value, because ultimately we're around about empowering their lives. The only way to empower their lives is to understand the changes in their lives and to make those changes even better. Remember, as an organisation, we do good things, but we want to do even more good things. Thank you very much.
Is the sign of a good speaker that when you go, they stop. Questions for Adam?
Must be lunchtime.
No. You don't get fed until someone asks a question. I have one here. Thank you.
Sorry, hello, my name's Eva, and I have just a practical question. What happens with those trainees? Like, do you help them afterwards to find a job as well? And do they work as truck drivers, or what exactly is
Yeah, I should have made that a bit clearer. We take our trainees, again, long-term unemployed, and they go hopefully into the logistics industry, because there's a gap. We take people who don't even have a driving licence, provide that driving licence, and then it's looking at a forklift truck licence, perhaps a heavy goods vehicle licence, but it's up to them. They choose which one they want. We provide them with lots of other skills and qualifications and 12 months of paid training. We then work with them. I say we have some dedicated members of staff. Our HR department, which is called our People and Learning Department, work with those people to help them find work. We have lots of contacts. So we use our networks and we try and arrange interviews for our people. They're not in a situation where they're preferred to anybody else, but I would say that we've levelled the playing field. They've come from a position where they were disadvantaged, and we've now provided them with the opportunities to empower themselves. So yes, we will help them write their CVs, provide them with references, even sometimes take them to the interview if they don't have there's no public transport or they don't have their own. So very practical, very hands-on support from the beginning.
Just a side question, and are they legally responsible for something as well? Like, do they have some official responsibilities towards you after the program?
No, none whatsoever. Once they leave us, they've effectively left the organisation. But as I say, we do chase them. We track them for 18 months after the program. And what we find is that lots of them are willing to stay in touch with us because they really value the assistance that our organisation has provided. In fact, we had our 26th birthday. We have an annual birthday party. It's fantastic. And lots of the former trainees come back. It's a great organisation. I've been very privileged to be involved with them.
We have one here. Behind.
Quickly then, what about scale? It seems to me from James' example and your example that scale somehow matters. Not somehow, but it matters a lot. And what would be your advice to comparatively small social enterprises here in the Baltic States, perhaps an enterprise that employs 5 people? What is their story they can say?
I knew I was going to be asked this question, and I'm not sure I've got an answer. Very similar. I mean, we as an organisation are reliant on contracts with local authorities. What we are able to do with those local authorities is demonstrate savings, and national government as well. If we get X number of people into employment, we will save the Treasury however much money, or provide the Treasury with money, I should say. I would say that not all local authorities are receptive to the ideas. We're now in the situation where, due to, I'm going to do this, austerity, local authorities are really having to cut their budgets back. And in Liverpool, there is now they're making the decision whether they should start to charge the individuals for their collection. My belief is if the charge comes in and if it's too significant, we will lose a lot of our donations and we will have a lot of fly tipping again, dumping on the streets. So I guess there's a real incentive or a real imperative for us as an organisation to go to these local authorities and say, look, we will save you money The provision of furniture to people in crisis means that they can maintain their home more effectively. It means that people won't involve in so much antisocial behaviour. There's a link between employment and criminality, between employment and health, employment and drug and alcohol abuse. It's about us as third sector social enterprise organisations telling that story effectively and trying to convince those decision makers that we can have an impact. And again, that's what I think SROI can do. For me, it bridges a gap. It gives the voice to the voiceless. If these decision makers are making decisions that should be for the betterment of these people here, we need to understand what these people want, what the outcomes and what the impacts are. So it's difficult. We're still struggling in terms of scale. We're an organisation of around 70 full-time employees and about 200 trainees. We have 15 and then another programme that's 200. So we still struggle with the scale, and we find that we need more proactive and more receptive local authorities. What we've done now as an organisation is started to diversify even further, and we want to generate our own revenue even more. We're going to start a business next year with a projected turnover of £70 million per annum after 7 years, because we want to do it ourselves. We're going to take that money, reinvest it, and put it back into people who are long-term unemployed and people living in poverty. I don't know if that answered the question at all.
The issue is never scale. It's not. Everybody starts from.
Oh, is that
somewhere.
the answer?
That's the answer, and it doesn't matter. If you take the point that had been made, the point's been consistently made that this is the SROI geeky nerd, but it is not an end in itself. It is a tool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're measuring changing one life or changing 1,000 lives. The impact on one measure is exactly the same. So that's what's important. Don't get scared by, there's only 2 of us. What do we do? Or, because the UK is a 62 million people, Ireland is 4 million people, Latvia is 2 million people. So sometimes it's much more challenging thinking in these big terms for countries that are small. But actually what you do is you scale it down it becomes a Latvian experience, and this is some of the things that Jim was talking about, and Adam said at the beginning, it's about how you, in a Latvian context, make this work in Latvia. Absolutely. It's how you take this and make it right for you. It's not about, these are just good examples, but they're not the answer. Latvians have to have answers to Latvian challenges because that's the only way it works.
Absolutely. I'd also say don't be daunted by any of the ideas I've suggested. Start small. We did. In 2006, we looked at one project. We didn't even consider all of the outcomes or all of the stakeholders. Start small, become comfortable, and expand as you do as well.
We asked them both to come and not be terrifying, but we failed. It's okay.
Expectations for next year, less fear.
Can I, at the risk of sort of cutting across Adam, I just wanted to add an example, which was one of the examples in front of the European Commission group when we were writing the impact measurement standards. And that was that we recognised that on the one end this needs to apply to British Red Cross or a big organisation. On the other end, think of a community pub where a small village is trying to look after the 12 or 14 elderly people in that village and are worried that they're getting isolated. They make the pub homely and friendly. They organise games for them to come and play. They make it a social centre. And their impact measurement is to have a chalkboard on the wall where they put a mark for every elderly person that comes in this lunchtime to see if they've all turned up or if they need to go and find them because they may have fallen over. That's measuring your impact. That is real life scale.
Thank you, Jim. We have one final question.
Hi, I'm Sabine. I'm representing charity shops in Latvia, Otrā Elpa, as well as Mentor Latvia, which provides social mentoring services for youth from orphanages. And the 2 challenges that we've faced in Otrā Elpa is in both organizations is getting the data and statistics. In the charity shops, it's time-consuming. You have to count every single thing, the number of things you donate further. You could measure it in bags or kilos, or and how do you put a monetary value? And so it's time-consuming. And thankfully, we have a manager who's very keen on numbers, and she loves doing it, but it's time-consuming. And we've tried to improve some of the processes to make it more effective, our work more effective, and so it's less of a hassle for the employees to always keep track of every single person, and it's approximately 40 people every day who come in to donate, and it's a lot of counting. So that's one challenge for the charity shops. It's how do you keep the balance of, and maybe there are some statistics that are more important than others. And for Mentor Latvia, the big challenge is that either we collect the data ourselves, but a lot of the state institutions don't have the statistics. And orphanages don't know, unless they themselves take measurements of what happens to the youth after intervention. There's no common database of what happens to them. What's the rate of them going to prisons, or, whether they're working or studying, or... So should we do that? If it's 2 employees, who should...
I understand the difficulties. I guess there's a couple of bits to that, if you like. I guess the answer is yes, to a point. Don't try and measure everything. Absolutely. Just measure what's most important. What's the most material issues? And I would say from that, it's not the donations, it's not the kilos or the amount of clothing. It is the outcomes for the individuals. It's the outcomes for those, very similar to what we've heard already this morning, around the change in their lives. And as an organisation, I would hope that by measuring some of those things and acknowledging all of the difficulties, that your job becomes easier in the future. Because you're able to say, well, actually, of those 6 things that we do, this one here doesn't really have the impact that we thought it did. Perhaps we don't need to do that, or perhaps we don't need to do that as much. And we can dedicate our time and resource into those things that create the most social impacts, the most social value. But absolutely, it is difficult. The data doesn't always exist. It certainly doesn't always exist in the UK. It's a matter sometimes of starting small. Start small, ask the important questions to the most important stakeholders. And it sounds to me like the most important stakeholders are the children in that respect.
Thank you very much. Please say thank you to Adam.